Welcome to the roundtable for the movie The Heart of Man, Chapter 4, The Lagoon. I love that part, and he comes off the cliff, and you know, he's trying to fight back, and he's really following this person, this girl, and they end up in the lagoon. This is the moment where I'm watching the film going like, okay, where's this going? Yeah. And she's in the water.
Look good too.
Yeah, she's in the water, and I'm like, okay, this is a Christian film, right, guys? What am I watching? And but you can sense how real it is. Yeah. This is it, right? This is, we've all been here, and so powerful. It's not even a real. It's a corpse, and he finds that out the hard way, just like all of us do. We all find out the hard way. My question in this section is the desire of my heart bad, or is it a reflection of something bigger, something that's better? Bruce, I feel like we need to start with you.
To start with, he is there because he's made in the image of God, and he has a desire to be accepted. He has a desire for intimacy. He has a desire for being significant and secure, and he wants to be affirmed. Wow. All these desires are good. Now, when desire gets distorted, then we go to all kinds of places. We start jumping. We start going into lagoons and so forth. But the desire, all those basic desires for relationship are what God placed in us because he is a God of relationship. Right. Intimate relationship, authentic relationship. And that's what he's going for. Just doesn't know that, you know, there's a way that seems right to a guy and it's not the right road. Wow. Yeah. It's not the right lagoon. It's not the right cliff. Right. And so I start the whole conversation with, no, these are good desires. If you just see him at that one point, we were talking about earlier, you see him at that one point, you would judge him. But if you didn't realize it, back up, no, this is who God made me, with these good desires for intimacy, friendship, love, acceptance, and security in that relationship. Wow.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, like, if you're following the narrative storyline, that like the image of, you know, the girl he's chasing, it's the same actress as the girl sitting at the table.
Yeah, I was waiting for that to see that.
Which is like super important to me. One, again, from the systemic issue, to be like, oh yeah, there's the exotic brown girl, right? Is the image of everything wrong, right? You're just gonna yeah, so yeah, there it is. There's the darkies. The darkies ruining everything. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, great.
Here we go again.
Thanks. You want me to be a part of what film? You want me to talk? What do you want me to talk about here? You know what I'm saying? But the idea of, like you said, the distortion, because it's her sitting at the table was like, yo, this is your lady love, right? This one is an imagined version of her, right? And I think that if we're talking about lust and pornography and our desires oftentimes are the imaginary version of what we want. I think that you could do that in your career, where it's like there's the career you have, and then there's like the imaginary one, and this idea that, like, you know, you having BFFs that are all amazing preachers too, and you could, like, it's easy for you to look whenever this fool sell another book to kind of be like, they're coming after me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna take my position. So now I have to, like, your homies, like, I gotta muscle out my homeboys, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, that's, you imagine that. Wow. You know what I mean? With my spouse, and like even a little bit of transparency for myself. Like, there's like my wife, and then there's like the version I made up of her that kind of exists in my head, which is like, you know, still 25 and never had kids and is always thinks I'm attractive, you know what I'm saying, and is ready to go as soon as I get home, and you know what I'm saying, never got no problems, you feel me, like just this like over-sexualized, docile, like completely like misogynistic, patriarchal way to think about this woman. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And if I come home and she's not that, when she's who she really is, you know what I'm saying? Right. Then I gotta somehow or another get back to that fantasy of what she's in. And when I looked at him chase her, how it's like it's her, but it's a her that you made up. Wow. That's not really her. It's not real. You know what I'm saying? So that's when I think about like our desires. It's like it's what God has given you, but fallen. It's an imagined version of what God has actually given you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. Someone else.
Yeah, like you said, it's the over-sexualization. Like, we live in an over-sexed culture.
Yeah.
And your perspective, for me as a woman, I'm tired of the woman being, she's the issue, right? It's like, oh, the woman, she's a seductress.
There goes Eve again.
Yeah, Eve, and look what she did, and it goes back to the garden, it's back to Eden, and back to the way that God created us. And when he created humanity, he said it was good, and what God did was good, and how he brought man and woman together was good. Like, all those things were good, but like over time we've colluded with this perverted understanding of sex and the relationship between the man and the woman. And here's this woman who's like this bad image, and she represents all these bad things, and he wants these bad things, and so it was this great picture that it was like a mirage. You know, it was like that's not a woman.
Right.
You know, and then I was relieved, even though it creeped me out. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, he's kissing, then it's like, I was like, I can't handle this. But it was like this relief of like, thank you for showing that women aren't bad. They're not this, you know, and I think that that's so much of the struggle that we face, is that as a woman, we feel like, you know, like that sexist culture, the misogyny, that oversex, like you feel like that. And in this, it just reminds us, no, this is how God created. He created humanity, and it's good, and it's beautiful. And he created man and woman to come together, and it's good. And it was his desire, and pleasure is fine, and you know, all these things. And I felt like that picture and that moment showed that, and it removed that stigma of like, it's, you know, that woman,
she
you know,
took this weak
man.
Yeah.
She's just like, what she's wearing, what is she doing? Like, why is she dressed like that? Or like, it's like removing that shame from women, which I think a lot of women experience. You know, and if they get caught up in a relationship, or they get caught up, I kept thinking, this was me, as the one man that kept having these affairs, these one night stands he was talking about, I just kept thinking about the woman in the scenario. Like, and of course the wife, and I was so grateful they showed us his wife, and we got to see that, and then obviously the full picture. But I think that that's a beautiful picture of God too. He wanted to show us, and this film does a great job of showing us that God made humanity, and it's good. He made people, and he made what he created and brought together, and it's good.
Yeah, you just answered the question. Desire is good. Relationship is good. And when, you know, I can't remember who says it in the movie, but lust is desire gone mad. And you see it, right? It's gone mad, which leads to emptiness and brokenness. And here's a picture of how most people feel when they pursue their lustful desires that are out of bounds. It's emptiness. Once again, it didn't satisfy whatsoever.
I love the fact that you know, we're just coming to this truth that our heart and our desires are good. What we're settling for is really a distortion. And what's interesting about the issue of pornography and sexuality is as you think about intimacy and vulnerability and being fully known, there isn't really an area of my life that is more sort of extreme in those things, like where I am giving myself, my body, I am fully exposed in sex. I am connecting with another individual in a physical way. Like, those are things that God designed that are powerful, which is why the distortion of that can be so destructive. And so it's really the sense of like, it's okay, like what we don't want to do is sort of make sex dirty, make connection, vulnerability, intimacy dirty. It's a sense of like, no, that is the most beautiful, almost like you want to see the heart of God, you want to know who God is, like think about sex. You know, think about like just the extreme craziness of sex, right? And then the enemy loves, well, let me give you a different version of it, a distorted version. And that's why the ripple effects of dysfunction and getting caught up in sort of this, you know, we never thought we'd go in the lagoon and be kissing a corpse. Right? We never thought that. And it's just a slight distortion of the ultimate plan, what God had intended. And so I think our heart is good. Our desire is good. Sex is fantastic. It's when we either sort of trust our own kind of distortions of that, we go, no, I got a better plan for that. Acting out of our own pain for that, looking for a 5-minute release versus some really true connection.
Right.
And this is why this topic's so key for us. It's like we have to talk about it.
Right.
These are powerful issues in our life.
Right. Well, I think it goes back to, okay, desire. Here is this man pursuing what he thinks is what he wants. So there's desire that's there. I remember this author, his name's Ted Roberts. He wrote a book called Pure Desire, and he tells this story about this church he's preaching at, and afterwards this young man comes up and says, Pastor, you got to pray for me and pray that God would take away my lust. And Ted Roberts says, I look at the young man and said, I would never pray that over you. Right. You need this, man. They understand in context what the kid was saying, but desire, we want that. And when it goes to the wrong person, when it's not channeled, when I'm not pursuing my wife, my current wife, after children, years of marriage, I need to be looking at her and pursuing her and saying yes to her in the same obsession that he has in this lustful corpse, which only leads to brokenness. It only leads to emptiness. And so then he fails, and he's got that thing on his lip that we all got, like, hey, let's clean that off. Okay, who wrote that in the script, huh? And so you have this moment of devastation and realization, it's corpse, and once again, I failed. And why is it, and I want to ask this question, why is it that for most all of us, when we fail this way, we feel like it's our responsibility to white knuckle, earn our way back to God? I failed again, but don't you worry. I'm going to, next 6 months, I'm going to Bible read, I'm going to be in church, I'm going to tithe, let me get on the app, I'm going to tithe right now. And by golly, I'm going to get back good with God. Why do we do that?
I think it's the logic of the fact that, because you did this. Like, you did this, this was you walked off this cliff, you pursued this imaginary, you know what I'm saying, and this was stupid, right? At least when you come to your senses, or even during. I know there have been plenty of times where I've been in the middle of doing stuff and this is dumb. What are you doing? This is so stupid, and you're still walking forward, But I think a lot of times, again, it has to do with this the interconnectedness of the things we were talking about. It's that shame, and I got to try to somehow, since I did this to myself, I need to fix it. Back to our fathers. You broke it, you fix it. Right? Your brother and sister didn't do that. You didn't know. You did. You clean. You dirtied the dishes. Right. You clean the dishes. Right. Ain't nobody else to know. You do it. You know what I'm saying? Right. So this ownership of it's a cop out to be oh yeah, I messed up, so somebody come get me. It's no, I need to make this right.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shame is really wanting us to be our own saviors.
Yeah.
We want to save ourselves from the situation. We got ourselves into it, and so we become moralistic beings, and we're gonna do whatever we can to feel better about ourselves, and that means working my way back instead of Jesus' way back to the Father. And the other thing about shame is that it layers one upon another. So I didn't just do this once, I did this several times. And so every time I put more layers of shame and more layers of, I'll never get this right. And so I'm going to promise God one more time. Right. And that'll make me feel better. And that's why most religions are based on that performance.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for Jesus.
Right.
Not based on performance.
Right.
So when we get trapped in that thinking of, I'm going to get my way back, that's just going back to the most historic of religions. Right. Performance driven.
Right. Yeah. Performance driven. Right.
So I feel better about myself.
Right.
I think it goes back to that initial conversation we're having about safety and fear. Fear, the control factor of I'm going to control what I do. I'm going to control the pathway back. I'm going to control what's good, reading my Bible every day, tithing, that will get me back in good graces. But it's still us controlling all those dynamics, which is motivated by our fear. And so that's where we have to move into the different system and say the system is not about fear, control, earning, performance. The system is based in love. And love says, God, I'm gonna screw up, but isn't this great? Let's have a party. You know, it's like the prodigal son.
Yeah.
The prodigal son came home, and he was probably had a resume in hand.
Yeah.
And he had sort of his qualifications in hand. And he's
Sure.
like, well, here's what I could do for you, God. And the father would have nothing to do with it. It's
Right.
like, we party. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't need to hear speeches. I don't need to see resumes. I don't even care what you've done.
Right.
No questions about, it's how he spent the money.
Right.
It's just come because, and that is so foreign to us, to our culture, to how we see ourselves, how we see, everything. And so it is about getting us into this absolutely ridiculous system called love. Radical acceptance. God not saying you have to earn or prove or do anything.
Wow.
But it's so foreign to us.
You know, I think that there's another element of that story, that the prodigal son story, that is almost touched on in a sort of an indirect way, which kind of comes back to like the misogynistic element of blaming the girl for my lust. You know what I'm saying? That like, as the scripture says, like we're led away by our own lust.
Right.
And like you said, like that wasn't her. He imagined that girl. You know what I'm saying? Because what he really wanted, the real woman, was being herself, her own beautiful self, and you walked off a cliff, right? But what I think the interesting thing about when we come back, right, and I'm pretty sure not only did he have a resume, he already planned out this apology too.
Right.
This amazing speech that was just like, shh, I don't want to hear it, right? But the reality that like, yo, you took what you had and you pissed it all away. It's gone, right? But there's another brother, right? Which means that the calf that you just killed belonged to him. That's you spent your inheritance.
Yeah.
You're taking the ring that's on your finger. That's my ring.
Right.
That's the older brother's ring. The calf we just killed, that was mine because you took your part, right? So for the older brother to stand outside like, hold up, what are you doing?
Right.
So it's almost like the older brother can say, no. You're not giving him your stuff, Dad. You're giving him my stuff.
Wow.
Because I didn't leave, right? And Dad's, and what I love about the passage is like, the story's not finished. So when he's like, man, just come to the party. Like we don't know if he comes back, right? He doesn't say it. But the point I think that I take away from that is like, when someone is restored, right? You don't have the right as the brother or sister of that person to fold your arms and be like, how was it, homie? Like, yeah, you enjoying that? You know what I'm saying? You don't have that right.
Yeah.
You feel me? Because what the father models was like, nah,
It's not how we
we're
roll.
good.
Yeah.
We are good. You know what I'm saying? And I am now willing to not only welcome you back to the table, but give out of mine. Right? I'm going to give you out of what I have. And that's restorative. And that's what you're saying. That's radical acceptance. That's not just from the Father, but it's from each other.
Yeah.
Right? That like you are completely restored. And then back to the sister. The sister in the image, in the story, was just busy doing her work.
Yeah.
Busy doing her work. And when he came back, it's like, well, I love you, baby.
Yeah.
You tripping. But I love you, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for us as a culture to have the wherewithal to, like you said, to not slut shame, to not be like, you know what I'm saying, well, it's her fault or his fault, or if the women would dress so modest, it's like, fam.
No. Yeah.
Fam, we're family, dog. We're sitting at the table. She's just as much of a member of the table as you are.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We're sitting here, and the Father has accepted us all.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. Powerful.
Well, I think we try to.
I
Did I cut you off?
I wanted to go
Did
to
I
you.
cut you off?
I wanted you to go.
You were talking about that feeling of like we gotta earn our way back, performance. I kind of piggybacking off of the prodigal son. I think my favorite part of the story is that obviously nothing surprises God. Yeah. He probably was rehearsing his speech. I love that. That just like the Bible just came even more alive to me. I'm gonna read that story and he's gonna be like walking back like, okay, this is what happened. Rehearsing it and like, but nothing surprises God. God knows about it. He saw it. Still loves you. And the best part of the story for me is that his father runs to him. And in ancient Jewish culture, men did not run.
You don't do that.
That was like taboo. You're not going to run to your son who has squandered his inheritance and has done God knows what. And I just love that picture of God. We're sitting there rehearsing, okay, how can I tell God? How can I deal with the sin? How can I deal with this pain? How can I do this? And God's just like looking at us, ready to run towards us. Wow. And to me, that just, it eliminates that performance. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to have the right speech and say it the right way and be perfect and perform. I simply can just come to him, and he's going to look at me and run.
It's crazy. Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Believing leads to behaving. Yeah. And when you believe this about the Father, and you believe this about God, it's his kindness over here that leads to repentance over here. I don't know who said it, but I believe this with all my heart. The work of a believer is receiving. So it's not earning, it's not, I'm going to get back. The hardest work I do as a Christian is receiving. It's the hardest thing I do. I receive grace. That's unmerited favor, undeserved blessing, the peace that surpasses all. And that's the hard part that we find here in the lagoon is like, it's so Proverbs 7. Proverbs 7, I went by the young man devoid of understanding, and there he was, and she comes in and she lures him away, and it says he did not know what was going to cost him his life. He did not know this girl was a corpse. Yeah. And all who've been slain by her were strong men. Yeah. Like this is a common thing. And yet, after being slain and costing his life, here's the grace of God. And it's saying to us once again, you can't even earn your way back. But how you get back is you receive my grace. Yeah.